we have cloud on one end, we have CDN that typically are more distributed architecture, and eventually we have telco that deliver the content or compute or storage or whatever towards the end users. And even that is divided in core up to the RAN in the end. So there are different layers of that. I'm going to jump to JT on this first, knowing you know the ecosystem very well from different aspects. If you look at the ecosystem and edge infrastructures that are out there, there needs to be cooperation with the ecosystem to make that all work. Do we see any issues there? Is that an opportunity? Is that an issue that we will end up with? What's your take on this, JT?
Oh, okay. So first, I'm gonna ask that we stop compartmentalizing network functionality for streaming media, right? There's no cloud, there's no telco. It's all distributed compute, right? So it's a big fabric. And the reason I say that now is because most DevOps work in containers, and containers within the microservices architecture are managed by solutions which are cross-platform, cross-provider, right? So I can have multiple clouds, multiple edges as part of my architecture, and I manage the distribution of my containers and the spin up, spin down, et cetera, across all of those providers centrally. So that's a big change that we've seen over networks, in the past like 10 years. And a lot of that's because of, network, NFV and all sorts of, things that have been done on the network side. So I want to start there. Like we need to get out of that thinking of compartmentalizing and just see this as really distributed compute that spans across providers. So in terms of the ecosystem, and everybody cooperating together, no, there's not really a problem there, right? Because when you start looking at compute fabric as a commodity, right? That's really what it is. The resources themselves are commodity. When you start seeing it that way, providers want to come together to make sure that there's a standardized approach, because if there's not a standardized approach, they're not going to be in the mix of that compute fabric that, let's say, like a Disney, a content provider, is going to use to spread across all of their use cases for streaming video, right? So that may be, again, encoding, transcoding, DRM, security. That may be things like WAF. That they're not going to spread these things across them because that provider is not taking a standardized approach within the industry, and hence, I can't use them, right? This is like one of the big use cases for open caching, right? So open caching provides lots of business benefits and lots of performance and speed benefits, but for content providers, it allows them to manage all of their delivery architecture, the caches across all of these disparate networks that are owned by individual companies from a single control plane, right? That's a big issue in terms of when you start talking about distributing out things. So again, if edge is all about distribution, distributed compute, then in order for people to play together, they have to come together and collaborate on the things that are important to those customers who want to use that distributed fabric, right? So things like protocols and the way things interconnect and configuration interfaces and all of that stuff has to be standardized. We don't see a problem with that. We have lots of our member companies are already coming together to define some of the ways those things work. They're competitors, right? They sit across the table from each other, but they know they have to work together or the end customer is not going to use it.